Hey everybody, welcome back to Prairie Trucker. And we're going to knock out a history video. I'm not getting these out near as often as I'd like. I've stated before I'd like to be getting them out once a week and it just ain't happening. But I'm going to stay with that once a week as much as possible. Hopefully we'll get there and get back on track. We're accumulating up to actual war, actual military conflict here. On this video, we're going to cover Lexington and Concord, basically considered the shot heard around the world. You could say this pretty well set off the conflict. I'm going to have to go. There's a section here that actually didn't print off quite right. It had a little tab piece that printed over the wording, but I go to my phone and I actually took a picture of the computer screen so that I can see that. When I get to it. Britain's General Gage had a secret plan. During the wee hours of April 19th, 1775, he would send out regiments of British soldiers quartered in Boston. Their destinations were Lexington, where they would capture Colonel leaders Sam Adams and John Hancock, then Concord, where they would seize gunpowder. But spies and friends of the Americans leaked word of Gage's plan. 2 lanterns hanging from Boston's North Church informed the countryside that the British were going to attack by sea. A series of horseback riders, men such as Paul Revere, William Dawes, and Dr. Samuel Prescott, galloped off to warn the countryside that regulars, British troops, were coming. Regulars. It is a myth that Revere and other riders shouted, "The British are coming." The warning would have confused a good many of the Americans living in the countryside who still considered themselves British. The regulars were known to be British soldiers. And here's the insert that got kind of put over, so I'll read it off my phone. We set off for Concord and were overtaken by a young gentleman named Prescott, who belonged to Concord and was going home. When we had got about halfway from Lexington to Concord, the other 2 stopped at a house to awake the men. I kept along. In an instant, I saw 4 of them, who rode up to me with their pistols in their hands, said, "G blank blank D, D blank blank N, you stop. If you go an inch further, you're a dead man." Immediately, Mr. Prescott came up. We attempted to get through them, but they kept busy before us and swore if we did not turn into that pasture, they would blow our brains out. They had placed themselves opposite to a pair of bars and had taken the bars down. They forced us in. When we had got in, Mr. Prescott said, "Put on." He took to the left, I took to the right. Just as I reached it, out started 6 officers, seized my bridle, put their pistols in my breast, ordered me to dismount, which I did. It was Paul Revere, account of midnight ride to Lexington. Word spread from town to town as militias prepared to conflict the British and help their neighbors in Lexington and Concord. Key word right there, militias. They're standing up to a tyrannical government. Second Amendment. The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. Those colonial militias had originally been organized to defend settlers from civil unrest and attackers by French or Native Americans. selected members of the militia were called Minutemen because they could be ready to fight in a minute's time. Sure enough, when the advance guard of nearly 240 British soldiers arrived in Lexington, they found about 70 Minutemen formed on the Lexington Green awaiting them. Both sides eyed each other wearily, not knowing what to expect. Suddenly, a bullet buzzed through the morning air. It was a shot heard around the world. The numerically superior British killed 7 Americans on Lexington Green and marched off to Concord with new regiments who had joined them. But American militias arriving at Concord thwarted the British advance. As the British retreated toward Boston, new waves of colonial militia intercepted them. Okay, 240 British soldiers, 70 Minutemen, 70 militia. Okay, if they did not have the same type of weapons that the military had, it never would have happened. That is why the Second Amendment was written, to give us, the common citizen, the ability to possess the exact same armaments that the military has to keep the government in check. As the British retreated toward Boston, new waves of colonial militia intercepted them, shooting from behind fences and trees. The militias inflicted over 125 casualties, including several officers. The ferocity of the encounter surprised both sides. Lieutenant Colonel Smith's report to General Gage. In obedience to your Excellency's commands, I marched on the evening of the 18th. Got INST period. I'm not sure what that means. I marched on the evening of the 18th with the Corps of Grenadiers and light infantry for Concord to execute your Excellency's order with respect to destroying all ammunition, artillery, tents, and then it's got a and symbol C period, so I'm not sure what that is, collected there, which was effected having knocked off the trunnions of 3 pieces of iron ordnance, some new gun carriages, a great number of carriages' wheels burnt, a considerable quantity of flour, some gunpowder, and musket balls, with other small articles thrown into the river. Notwithstanding, we marched with the utmost expediency and secrecy. We found the country had intelligence or strong suspicion of our coming, and fired many signal guns. The first bloodshed at Lexington and Concord marked the crossing of the threshold, and the momentum from these events pushed both sides further apart. Following the battles, neither the British nor the Americans knew what to expect next. And we all know what's been brewing. And all it's going to take is a governor or national leader, president, or something like that to bring the military against the people. There will be militias stand up. It's only going to take one round being fired. Indignation against the British ran high in the colonies, for they had shed American blood on American soil. Radicals such as Adams took advantage of the bloodshed to increase tensions through propaganda and rumor spreading. The Americans surrounded the town of Boston, and the rebel army started gaining many new recruits, which I think there's a lot of people out there that are just keeping quiet right now. This kicks off like this, and people that look at militias now say that there's some militias with very large numbers. Well, those numbers are going to be small compared to what they will be. During the battles of Lexington and Concord, 73 British soldiers had been killed and 174 wounded. 26 were missing. Lord Percy, who led the British back into Boston after the defeat suffered at Concord, wrote back to London, "Whoever looks upon them," meaning the rebels, the colonists as an irregular mob will be much mistaken. 3 British major generals, William Howe, Henry Clinton, and Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne, Burgoyne, were brought to Boston to lend their expertise and experience to the situation. Benedict Arnold and Ethan Allen joined the cause. Shortly after the battle, an express rider carried the news to New Haven, Connecticut, where a local militia commander and wealthy shopkeeper named Benedict Arnold demanded the keys to a local powder house. After arming himself and paying money from his own pocket to outfit a group of militia from Massachusetts, Arnold and his men set off for upstate New York. He was searching for artillery that was badly needed for the colonial effort and reckoned that he could commandeer some cannon by capturing Fort Ticonderoga. I've been by Fort Ticonderoga, the old Fort Ticonderoga, and there's still parts of the walls still standing. A rotting relic from the French and Indian War. Up in the Hampshire Grants, part of modern-day Vermont, Ethan Allen, who led a group called the Green Mountain Boys, probably going to be a pretty important term there, Green Mountain Boys, also had the idea to capture Fort Ticonderoga. The two reluctantly worked together, and surprisingly, the poorly manned British fort before the dawn on May 10th, 1775. The fort's commander had been asleep and surrendered in his pajamas. So, it is kicked off. So pretty much from here on is basically physically fighting for our independence. It's not going to be little skirmishes and little outlandish little boy things anymore. The fight's on and it's going to spread. So we appreciate you watching. Hit that thumbs up, I'd appreciate it. If you ain't done so, hit that subscribe button down there. You look down there and it's not red, that means you ain't hit it yet. If it's hit it, it'll turn red. I'd appreciate that real good, or a whole lot. We'll catch you on the next video.